Yo, I got some old school fun to play with. 66 Cutlass. This thing's all original except for the exhaust. It's got dual exhaust and tires. Everything else is original. And it's got 31,000 miles on it. It's very clean. Little rip in the seat. 3-speed on the floor. He needed a carb rebuild because it was puking all over the place. I didn't feel like rebuilding it, so I had him get it rebuilt at the carburetor shop. They do a really nice job. And I had it rebuilt. It had a little coolant leak that I fixed a couple of weeks ago. I just put a thermostat and a gasket and a couple new hoses on it. On this wonderful 330. The filter in the carburetor didn't really work because it got plugged up with stuff right away. There's just all kinds of nasty stuff in it. I let it ran really nice, and as soon as he went and took it for a test drive, it died and it just flooded the engine full of gas. I took it off and he took it back to the carburetor shop and had it rebuilt again because I didn't want to mess with it. So I got to do that, and since the tank is all gummed up, I had him get a tank. He ordered a stainless steel tank for it that I'm going to put in, and he got a stainless steel sending unit, and I'm pretty sure that the sock is going to be gone. The original sock, I'm pretty sure that got sucked right up into the carburetor. So the guy at the carburetor shop said I could just blow all these lines out and it'll be good to go, but I think I'm going to end up putting a fuel pump in it. It's right there. It's easy enough to get at and do. I don't know. The owner might not even know I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do it. Better safe than sorry. One other thing I noticed too is it had a little radiator leak for the past 20 years on the thing, so I'm draining the coolant right now, and I had him order an aluminum radiator. And these are really nice. So he got that. And I think I'm going to use his original radiator cap. It's the old AC Delco one. It's got the brass on the top. It doesn't seal very good at all, but it doesn't really matter because there's no overflow tank in these old cars. It's just a hose that just drops down on the ground. So you fill it up, and when it expands, coolant goes all over the ground, and then after that, it's the right level. And that's how they did stuff. Kind of strange, but whatever, it works. So I think I'm going to put some Evapor Rust in a container and just put this upside down so it looks all clean and new again. So that's what I got. I got the gas tank, the carburetor, the radiator, probably a fuel pump, and I'm going to blow out the lines. God, this vinyl top is still perfect. He must have had that done once upon a time. See what this thing looks like. I let it sit overnight. Ooh. Might as well start on the radiator. Unlike 99.9% of the junk I get to work on, I'm actually going to take my time and be real cautious not to damage anything on this car. This is pretty cool. I've never seen battery terminals like that before. They're factory. They're like spring-loaded. This thing's broke. I think these clips I gotta push in to get them out on the bottom side. They're metal. I think they're spring steel. These are 1/2 inch or 13 millimeter for all you metric guys out there. I see how those go. You gotta pinch them. I'm probably going to reuse this, so I got to get this off without damaging it. just got a razor blade here. And the glue isn't really working very well anymore, thankfully enough. I'm going to need a new clamp for this lower radiator hose. I know I'm probably going to hear it too. There's probably going to be some people that are like, oh, you're not bringing it back 100% original. It's just losing the value of the car. Well, you know, you can always do that pretty easily because it's just a radiator and a couple of clamps. Same with the gas tank. You can always put some cheap steel gas tank in the thing and make it worth more money. This is about one of the easiest radiators in the history of forever to replace. Look, it says fill cold right here. I see some little bit of differences in this radiator, but it looks like it's going to fit. I just took and put some rubber cement on here. I didn't want to get too carried away with it. And rubber cement too, it's kind of like, I don't know, non-intrusive. It'll peel up real easy and the stuff comes off real easy if it needs to. This thing looks like a Chevy truck radiator. That's probably what it is. I bet it's just got the same dimensions. Because of this hose right here, that's telling me right now that that's for a Chevy truck, because that's for the heater hose on a Chevy truck. Looks like this lower radiator hose is smaller. It's a lot smaller. Would have been nice if they gave you an adapter of some kind to put on this so it fits this hose. This hose is too big too. I could clamp it, but I think I'm just going to get a smaller hose. Oh yeah. I went to the parts store and found one of these. It's probably been on the shelf for a half a gazillion years. The sticker don't even stick anymore, which is nice. I'll just leave that junk on there. Put it in the radiator side first. That should work. I'm going to pressure test this thing now, make sure it doesn't leak anywhere. Since there's no coolant in here, I'm going to wear myself out just pumping this thing. I'll leave it at 8 pounds. Leave it sit that way for a good long time and make sure it holds pressure. I'm going to get this fuel line off next. This is a 5/8 or a 16 millimeter for all of you metric guys. Ooh, feels like it's gonna break. I'm gonna hold on to this with a 3/4 inch, and that'd be an 18 millimeter for all of you metric guys. Oh, wow. I should put an inline fuel filter on this line somewhere. I think I'm gonna make a line and put a paper filter in it. That way it'll have the stone filter in the carburetor, the factory one, and then a paper filter in a line that I'm going to make. And I'm just gonna leave all of this factory stuff in a box and leave it with the car, because if somebody wants to put this car back to 100% original someday, they can. I did the same with the radiator. I just put it in a box with the hose so he can keep that in case somebody needs it for a reference or actually wants to rebuild that radiator. Now this fuel pump's got a couple bolts on it. The top one's slotted on an Oldsmobile. These should be 1/2 inch or 13 millimeter for all you metric guys. Every time I take off a factory part on one of these old cars, I just cringe. I really don't want to do it. I want to leave this thing as stock as possible, but me being a mechanic, the thing I'm concerned about the most is making darn sure this thing's going to be 100% reliable when I'm done. So I'm just going to do this. I don't have a replacement fuel pump yet, but if I remember correctly, these Oldsmobiles, it's got a really long shaft on it, and it rides on an eccentric on the front of the camshaft. I should be able to just pull this thing out, and there shouldn't be anything in my way, really. Yep. Yeah, I remember. Thankfully enough, pretty much the whole gasket's stuck onto the fuel pump, so I can make quick work at this. I'm just going to clean it up with a razor blade. I got the new fuel pump. It came with a couple of fittings. It had a 1/4 pipe to 1/8 inch pipe adapter, and then it had a hose barb that was 1/8 inch pipe that's screwed into it, and it's screwed in all the way, both of them, so the tapered pipe's no good. If you got tapered pipe that screws in all the way, it's no good. So I bought a brass fitting, had to go back to the parts store and get that. I actually cut a couple barbs off of it because this thing's getting really close to hitting a bracket on the engine. The factory one, this line is tipped down a little bit, probably for clearance issues. I think it's just barely gonna make it. So I'm gonna deal with that. And I got a PTFE thread sealant. This is Permatex. And this is the way I like to do these. Tapered pipe requires thread sealant. I like to use the liquid stuff because it works way better than tape. And then after I do that, then I put a little tape on it too. This is about the best seal in the universe for tapered pipe, as far as I've found. Make sure none of this is going to get into the fuel pump. So I'm just going to like pull back the first thread. That should be good. In the end, looks like a 9/16 for this. For all of you metric lovers, that'd be a 14 millimeter. I think I'm actually going to put this in the vise and get it good and tight. So this is a 3/4 inch or a 19 millimeter. I'm just going to hold it so it doesn't twist, and I'm going to get this really tight. With tapered pipe, the tighter you get it, the better it's going to seal. So I got that really nice and tight. Now on the factory one, I'm just going to kind of mark the orientation of this thing. It's centered with this flat right here. So it looks like it's going to be the same as this flat right here. So I just want to center this up here with this here. This is an 11/16, which is the same as an 18 millimeter for all you metric guys out there. This is an 11/16 or 18 millimeter too. The thing is too, when you're taking these off, you got to make sure you don't put the wrench in the center because it's going to crush this brass fitting. So I got to have it on the edges, and I'm going to do it on the back side. I blew this fitting out and a bunch of powdery crap came out of it. And I tried to clean it as best as I could. That should be good. Now I'm at the back of the tank and I'm going to want to blow out this line. They got another problem too. He says that the gas gauge reads over full now. But for now I'm going to get this fuel line off of here. I have a pan I got nice and clean, and I zip tied a rag around this fuel line. So when I put pressure through it, it's going to catch whatever's in there, because I'm curious to see what the heck that stuff is. I actually used an open fitting instead of a blowgun so I could get the most air going through this line as I possibly could. I just plugged it into my chuck and put that up against the fuel line. I'm real curious to see if there's anything in here. It's clean. I got some rust out of it. That's it. No big chunks, no big particles. And I got something in there. I got the key on and his gas gauge is reading over full. I'm gonna unplug this sending unit. Now I just poked a wire into the thing, and I put the other end of the wire on the ground where the ground is for the tank. And if I turn the key on, it should go to E, and it stays on full. It's down to E now. I turn the ignition on. What I did is just put a ground on the battery and hooked it up to my wire for my sending unit. So this ground is no good. That's what's going on with the thing. I got more problems with this fancy stainless steel tank. There's a 1/2 inch line here. I have absolutely no idea what it's for, so I just plugged it off. And this 1/4 inch hose is a vent line. It's actually a steel line that runs all the way over to like right about here, and they do that so when the gas sloshes around, it tries not to make it up to this hose. The only problem is the factory one is right here. So I'm gonna have to get some 1/4 inch hose and probably go around the tank and then run a 1/4 inch union on the rubber hose that goes to here. Other than that, the tank looks like it's gonna work just fine. Before I put this tank in, I'm gonna put in the sending unit. I got this rubber seal that goes on the inside. And I have this ring that holds everything in. And sometimes these can be a real pain. In this aftermarket one, there's no bends right here. I'm gonna take and cheat a little bit. I'm gonna bend these tabs down just a hair. So that'll help get them started. That should help a lot. Here's that vent hose I gotta get off of here. And on the other side of the tank, I got the bad ground I need to deal with. And this is a 1/4 inch. And for all you metric guys out there, it's still a 1/4 inch. I'm gonna have to clean that really good when I put the new one back on. I made some fun for myself. I took my motorcycle lift, I put my tranny jack on the motorcycle lift, and I strapped the tank down on that. There's not much fuel in here, so hopefully it won't slosh around too much and make a big mess. He's got air shocks in here, and there's some little clippy things holding them on. I'm gonna pop those out, so hopefully I can reuse these. I have 2 9/16 nuts for these straps. For you metric guys, that's a 14 millimeter. When this guy was a teenager, he actually painted the bottom of the tank and the frame and the drums gold. Because apparently that's what they did back then. I'm just gonna slowly let this down. I flipped this tank upside down so I can drain it. Let's see how interesting this gas looks. Ew. Oh, nice. Try to do a better job of this. Oh yeah, that's really brown. Oh my gosh, look at that. That's a fun bird's eye view, wouldn't you say? Serious yuck. I'm dying to see what's in this gas tank sock. I got a feeling there's nothing left of it. Wow, there's still a sock. This thing must be torn through somewhere to get all them big chunks. Oh, there it is. Oh, oh, nice. It's a little rusty. I thought that sock would be completely destroyed. Oh my, oh, oh nice, oh, oh isn't that lovely? Well, now we know why the carburetor got dirty in a hurry. I still don't understand why the filter in the carb didn't do its job though. This tank came with new stainless steel straps. Before I put this thing on here, I got 10 feet of 1/4-inch fuel hose. Oh my gosh, it's fuel injection hose. No wonder why it was so expensive. That's all I could get. I'm gonna put this on here. And this cheesy unit here, I used 3/8 fuel hose on 1/2 inch, and I had to stretch it a lot, and I used a couple of cheesy clamps and a bolt. I mean, it's never gonna leak or rust. They gave me these cheesy looking caps that were on there, and I don't know if these are impervious to gas or what. I'm not even willing to take a chance on this thing. I don't know. It'll look better when it's up there because it won't be seen. But for now, I'm gonna put this on. More aftermarket, that ain't right. Bend that down a little bit. There, that's better. I'm too cheap to buy a hose barb, so I made my own out of a bubble flare and 1/4-inch brake line. Now if this don't say empty when I turn on the key, I'm gonna start cussing and screaming and having a fit like a 2-year-old child. Ooh, it's still on E. Joy. And E is not under E. Wow, unlike a GM. Time for the fuel pump. I got this clean and it's super flat, so I'm not gonna put any gasket sealant on it. How do you like me now? This gets torqued too. The age where nobody ever used a torque wrench. Be like, torque wrench? What's that? I'm a mechanic. I don't need no stinking torque wrench. It's on there. I kind of want to keep it away from this radiator hose. That would be nice. If it's on that hose, it might vapor lock. Now here's the factory line that goes like this. And I'm not going to use it because I want to put an inline filter in here. I bought some junk from the parts store and I already put a bend in it. It's a little longer than the factory one though, because my tube bender wouldn't go up that far. But if I can get this in here, which I think I can, and make a cut, I'm going to have to bend it up a little, and then I'm going to make a cut and I'm going to put a filter in it and then bend the rest of the line when I get the carburetor in. This has actually been a pretty huge job. My workstation is a disaster. So it's kind of like this one. Kind of. These things suck. I got a real deburr that doesn't suck. No suck. Got a little bubble on there so the line doesn't pop off. I always want the arrow facing towards the carburetor, obviously. I really don't like it there because it's touching too many things. I don't like it there at all. I cut this shorter. I'm gonna double flare this and hopefully it'll give me the room I need. It should be about the same as the original. Like that. It can't touch anything, especially anything hot. It's just barely touching the intake manifold. So I'm going to bend it up just a little bit. And there, it's flopping around. That's amazing. And it's not really touching the heater hose either. I think it's going to be okay right there. I can finally get this bloody stinking carburetor on here. I bet you've never seen this. Regular screws on a Quadrajet carburetor. I've never seen that in my life, and I've done a ton of old cars. I think this was the first year they put a Quadrajet on something, and before that they were Carter AFBs, which are now Edelbrock. So I'm pretty sure in '66 this was a brand new idea, and that's why there's regular screw heads on here. That stuff's working. Apparently this carb shop guy, he really knows his stuff. He says I don't need to adjust it either because he's got the factory air fuel mix settings already on here, and this is a factory engine. It's never been messed with. He says it's dialed in. You can just bolt it up. He says the choke should be adjusted right and everything. So I shouldn't have to do a darn thing to this, which is amazing. The rear carb bolts are a 1/2 inch or 13 millimeter for all of you metric guys. I'm loving saying that. And when you tighten these carbs too, a lot of people think you do it in a crisscross pattern. You always tighten these up a little bit at a time in a circle, especially Hollies. I've seen the base plate snap on Hollies because people tighten them in a crisscross pattern and they're being stupid about it. You just go a little at a time. These don't need to be very tight too. Whenever I tighten up a carburetor, I always use a short ratchet or else just hold it really close to my socket, because that right there, the turning force being that close to this ratchet, is as much torque as I'm going to get out of it. And that way I know I'm not over torquing it, because that's what we did 30 years ago when we didn't have torque wrenches. And the snap-on screwdriver, it has a 7/16 hex on the top of it, which is nice. I got a feeling this adjustment is not too cool, because if it gets too cold out, this thing will slam shut. So once in a while I got to adjust these a couple times a year depending on the weather. But in summertime this should be right. When it gets below 30 degrees, this thing's going to be too tight. I didn't bother wasting your time showing you my tube bending practices, but I think I got it just perfect. It's not going to touch anything. I got space all the way around that filter, so that's cool. Now generally you don't want an upsweep like this. You don't want the line coming up and back down, but chicken butt. Now this nut on a Quadrajet is always a 1 inch or a 25 millimeter for all of you metric guys. And you gotta hold on to this sucker real good when you tighten this down. Put on the vacuum advance hose. That's kind of loose. I think I'm gonna put a zip tie on that. Well, I put some gas in the tank. I had to add some of this junk because this is a leaded car. It doesn't have hardened exhaust seats in it, so if I run unleaded fuel in here, it's gonna hammer the exhaust seats and burn them up. I use non-oxygenated fuel too, with no ethanol and no additives in it. And this stuff, I really don't like this stuff, back when I had leaded cars and they didn't sell it at gas stations anymore, I usually just got 100 octane low lead aviation fuel, and I mixed it about 4 gallons of non-oxygenated fuel to 1 gallon of low lead aviation fuel, and that seemed to work really good for the stuff I used to have. This is your overflow for the float bowl. If this float ever sticks, gas will come pouring out of the top of this. So if I put a little funnel in here, I can fill this bowl up full of gas. That way I don't have to crank it over for a million years and try to prime that new fuel pump in them empty lines. Now I just want to look down here, and I want to give it some throttle, and I want to make sure it squirts. There it goes. I got gas. I put about 6 gallons of gas in it. It's reading over E. Let's see if this thing wants to run. It's running like it's got a vacuum leak. Oh, it's got a vacuum leak. Well, that's more like it. Gas is clean. I just got to fill it up with coolant. Owner's making me drive his car. I think I know how to work a Saginaw.
I hope so.
My first truck had a Saginaw on the column. I got to be nice to this car, don't I?
No, you can push it down a little bit.
'Cause I'm not nice to anything.
No, you're not. Just open the carb up.
That's reverse.
Yeah, you hit reverse.
Oh, this thing turns on $1.
Yeah.
Sure ain't a dime, I'll tell you that.
Well, it's old. It's old, man.
Oh, the memories.
I'm telling you, but it's
memory lane.
It's fun, man.
I'll park it in my over here.
Unless you think it needs something else.
No, it's done. Okay, say okay, bye.
Okay, see ya.